Hello and welcome to the show. From Weeping to Warrior, Igniting Freedom with Roshawn Nicole. I am your host, Roshawn Nicole, where we interview amazing guests from all over the world, sharing their incredible stories of how they overcame obstacles and trials. If you have been following my journey from episode 1 to 15, thank you so much for following me. You are here. This is the season finale, and where I'm going to just give some shout outs and also share my story on this episode. If you are new here, welcome. I'm so glad you made it to this is episode number 16, the season finale. As you see, I got my celebratory outfit on. I got my hat on. We're going to take this hat off in a minute, but it keeps falling off. But I just wanted to say, woo, we made it to episode 16, and this is the season finale. I am so excited to just talk about this season, to give thanks to my amazing guests who came on and shared their story. And we're going to do that. So on this episode, I'm going to give my shout outs. I'm going to say my thank yous. And then we're going to do a little something different. This is the last episode, and this is called This Is My Story. So I'm going to share my story in details of how I overcame depression, anxiety, addiction, and PTSD, and just share my story a little bit and some ways of how I overcame that, and some practical tips that maybe you can apply to your life. So before we get into my story, I want to give my shout out and my thanks to everyone who has made this season possible, who has made this podcast / radio possible. I've had such a great time. I was a little nervous at first, doing this podcast, this radio, but I have enjoyed it. I have enjoyed interviewing and hearing amazing stories. And if you have missed those stories, you can go back on my YouTube and check out episode 1 through 15. So let's get started with my thank yous. First, I want to give a shout out to the producer of the show, because I could not have done it without Dr. Teresa Jordan out of Atlanta, and she is the CEO of Praise Fest Gospel Network. So this airs on Monday nights on her show out of Atlanta. And not only that, but just making me look beautiful every week. Her production and her editing, I just don't have the words to just thank you enough, because you have truly made this possible. And I just want to say thank you so much for every week just having the episodes and just making me look beautiful. So thank you so much. My next shout out is to Ontario Richard, and he came to me last year and he was like, Roshawn, I'm gonna start a radio station out of Oklahoma. And so he had asked if I was interested in having a segment talking about mental health, because those who know me know that is my passion, of singing about it, speaking about it, and sharing. And so I thought about it. I was like, this is something that I've kind of been thinking about. So that just confirmed it. And so I was so excited for him to, ask to be a part of his radio station. And so thank you to Ontario Richard. Thank you so much for coming to me and playing the segments each Friday. And if you have not checked out his radio station, it is Oklahoma Victorious Worship Radio out of Oklahoma. Go check him out and his music. And also he has other segments on his radio show as well. So thank you to you as well, Ontario. I appreciate you. All right. Now I'm going to give a special thank you to my amazing guests who have made every episode just bringing their stories, sharing their testimonies, being authentic and transparent and real. And I just want to say it takes a lot of courage to do this. It's not easy sharing your story. I know, like when I shared my story, it's scary, and we are fearful of judgment, of what people think of us. And so I just want to give a special thank you to each one. And so we're going to start with episode number 1. So if you missed them, and I'm going to take this off. If you've missed them, then you can go and check them out on my YouTube channel, the episode. So the first one that I want to give a shout out to is episode 1, and that is Estella Johns. And she's actually near and dear to me. That's my aunt, my real aunt. And so she was number 1. She was like, I'm I'm going to come on. I'm going to support you. I said, thank you, Auntie. So thank you to Estella Johns. And the first episode we talked about was overcoming grief. And she talked about the loss of her mother, which was my grandmother, and how she overcame that and how music has helped her overcoming that. So thank you to you, Auntie Estella Johns. That was episode number 1. Episode 2, we had Charlotte Williams, and she came on and she just talked about, overcoming her past traumas. And thank you, Charlotte, for coming on to the show and being vulnerable and sharing your past traumas and how music and all the things that you're doing has helped you to overcome your trials as well. So thank you to you, Miss Charlotte Williams. Episode number 3, we have Marvelous Marissa from ATL. And this episode was entitled From Speech Class to Beauty Queen and Author. And I do have her book here. So Marvelous Marissa came on and shared her story. This was a great episode. All episodes were great, but I was emotional on this episode because her book spoke to me. And how she, overcame just so many obstacles and trials in her life. And now this girl, she is a beauty queen and she's speaking to young women. And I just saw the other day, she has a children's book out and I'm just like, oh girl, keep doing your thing. So thank you, Marvelous Marissa, for your incredible story, your incredible journey and your book. So go check her out as well. So that was episode number 3. Right. Episode number 4, we have Arnisha Lowe out of ATL, and this episode was entitled From Heartbreak to Strength. She talked about the loss of her son, and she also talked about her overcoming grief and loss and depression. And she has a book entitled Why Not Me? I Was Built for This. So I want to thank Arnisha for coming on the show and for sharing your story, for sharing your testimony. And her book is amazing because she has some journaling sections, and she just talks about her story of how, she's going through the darkest time of her life of losing her son unexpectedly and how she overcame that. So beautiful singer as well. So go check her out. Her music is available everywhere as well. Thank you so much, beautiful queen, for coming on the show. That was Arnisha Lowe, episode 4. Episode number 5. I want to give a shout out to Tom Taylor, and he is a singer-songwriter out of here in Seattle, and that episode was entitled Victory Through Music, and he just talked about his journey of being an independent artist and how, sometimes we go through ups and downs and highs and lows, and just how music has helped him to overcome all the struggles and the challenges of being an independent artist. So that was episode number 5. Tom Taylor, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you for sharing your story. Keep doing your amazing music, and we will for sure stay connected. So thank you so much. All right. Episode number 6, we have Mr. Jermel Williams, and this episode was entitled Triumph Over Addiction to Award-Winning Singer. And so when I did Jermel's episode, I had ordered his merch and I didn't get a chance to wear it because I want to support, whether if I'm buying a book to support the artist or the guest or their merch. And so his didn't come in on time, but I do have it. And his merch, he has No Greater Love. Love that. No Greater Love. And I don't just have his shirt, but I also have to get the beanie as well. So your girl got to rock the beanie as well. So I got that too. So I wanted to send some support and some love. And Jermel Williams talked about overcoming addiction and depression. And so go check his episode out. And he also has amazing music out as well. So thank you, Jermel, for coming on, and keep doing your music and keep igniting freedom. All right. We have episode number 7. That's my girl here from Seattle. We have Lisa Renee Hutchins. And this episode was entitled From Single Mother to Author and Poet. And she talked about her struggles of being a single mother. But she talked about how she overcame some obstacles of, trying to provide for her children, and how now she is a author and also she is a poet. And I have her book here. And this book talks about thoughts of healing families, the reflections of their grief. And so we talked a little bit about that on our episode, and that is episode number 7. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your story. Thank you for all the incredible work that you're doing. Keep on keeping on. Keep igniting freedom. Love you, girl. All right, we are on episode, where we at? That was 7, number 8. And episode number 8, we have Mel Wardoff, and she is here out of Seattle, and she's the one who introduced me to functional medicine, and her episode is entitled Overcoming Addiction and Depression Through Functional Medicine. She shares her story of how functional medicine has helped her overcome anxiety and depression. And that's the same certification program that I'm in and will be certified in hopefully 2 weeks. So go ahead and check that out. If you're looking for an alternate route of overcoming anxiety and depression, that is one to watch. So I want to encourage you to go and watch episode 8. Thank you, Mel, for all the work that you're doing. Congratulations on all your work and your new brick and mortar. And keep on keeping on. And I can't wait to see you continue to ignite freedom and helping other people on their journey. All right. Episode 9, we have Ephraim Kings, and he's from New Jersey. And his episode was entitled From Prison to Purpose, an award-winning rapper. And he has amazing music out, sharing his story. And he talks about his journey from being in prison. And now he is also a counselor, and he's counseling others and uplifting them and letting them know that there is hope and freedom. So Ephraim Kings, thank you so much for coming on my show, for sharing your journey. Keep on keeping on. And I appreciate you. All right, episode number 10, we have Just Vince 1 out of North Carolina, and his episode was entitled From Rock Bottom to R&B Star. And that episode, he was just real and raw, sharing his testimony of how he overcame addiction, and how, I love how we talked about on this episode that he said he had to go to treatment 6 or 7 times. And I wanted him to highlight that, during the episode, of sometimes it takes multiple times, and that's okay. And so he is a living testament of that. And so I just want to say, Just Vince, keep on doing you, King. He's putting out music. He's doing his thing on social media. He's staying consistent. And so thank you for coming on the show, for being vulnerable, for being transparent. I appreciate you. All right, episode number 11, we had Gabby G, all the way from Colorado, and this episode was entitled From Bullied to Motivational School Speaker. And I met her in Atlanta last year on the stage, talking about how she was bullied as a child, and she struggled with depression and anxiety. And she talked about how she overcame that, and now she is speaking to middle school and high school students. And what an inspiration she is. I just want to encourage you, if your children or your high school or middle school children are suffering from, bully, that this is a great episode to go and check that out. And that is episode 11. Gabby G, I just want to say thank you for coming on my show, for igniting freedom, for shedding light, for sharing your testimony, and for speaking to middle school and high school students that there is hope and healing on the other side. So thank you so much. All right. Episode number 12, we have Miss Delicia James from Texas, and her episode was entitled From Pain to Purpose, an award-winning singer. And so I want to give Miss Delicia a shout out as well. And we talked about her book, Don't Believe the Lies, A Journey of Overcoming Suicide. We also talked about her amazing music as well. Thank you, Delicia, for coming on the show, for sharing your gift of music and song, for sharing your story and your book, which is incredible. And so I just want to encourage those who are also listening or watching to go ahead and check her out, Delicia James, her music, as well as her book, Don't Believe the Lies. Thank you, Warrior Queen, for coming on the show, and keep on keeping on. Keep on igniting freedom. All right. Episode 13, we have my girl, Larkita Demps, here out of Seattle, and we had her to come on to talk about what does trauma healing actually look like. And this one was it was an interview style, but she was sharing more some practical tips that people can apply to their lives. And so we talked about LI therapy, we talked about what does trauma look like. And so if that is something of your interest, I want to encourage you to go and check out episode 13. And I want to give a thank you to you, Larkita, or my girl. I call her Kita. She knows it. So when I say Larkita, it just sounds, I grew up with her. So Kita, thank you for coming on the show, for shedding light, for giving us some wisdom and enlightening us and giving us information about trauma and trauma therapy. So go check that out, everyone. That is episode 13. Thank you, girl. All right. In episode 14, we have my girl, Vera Reynolds, and I've been knowing her for quite a while. I've met her 20 years ago as an educator, and her episode was entitled From Culture Shock to the Classroom and Stage. And she talked about coming from Kyrgyzstan, where she was born and raised, and coming to a whole new world here in America and learning the culture, the language, and wanting more opportunities. And so now she is an educator. That's how I met her, a photographer, a mother, and a wife, and doing amazing things, a singer-songwriter as well. And so I just want to say thank you, Vera, for coming on the show. And she has merch as well available, and it's called, this one I wore, and it's called Draw Close. And the back says, take me back to our first love. And she's talking about God. So you can get this available on her, hit her up at Vera Reynolds. I know you can find her on all social media platforms as well as her music. So Vera, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. Keep igniting freedom. Keep sharing your music. And thank you, girl. I appreciate you. All right. And the last friend that I want to thank is episode number 15. And that is BP, or Brandon Parker. We call him BP. And his episode will be entitled From Prison to Motivational Speaker and Hip Hop Artist. And I want to thank him for coming on the show. I've been knowing him since middle school, high school. So we go back a while. Thank you, BP, for coming on the show, for sharing your story, and for being vulnerable and transparent and letting others know that there's hope and healing on the other side. And I want to share his merch, and his shirt that he has here. Let's see if you can see it. It's called Love is Dope. And I was trying to get the pink. So I wore the yellow on his episode, but BP, I still want the pink shirt to match, my set here. So we got to get a pink one. So, but thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you. So with all that being said, thank you everyone for coming on the show for season 1. And next season, I have some ideas of what I want to do. But of course, we're still going to talk about mental health, because we still need to raise awareness and talk about this topic. And so all my friends that came on, keep doing what you're doing. And those who are listening, watching, to keep on shedding light and igniting freedom and talk about this. We need to continue to keep talking about mental health and letting people know there is hope.
I'm free. No more chains, no more chains are binding me. I'm free. I can lift my hands in victory. I'm free. Ain't nobody stopping me. Look at what you done to me. Pack your bags and leave. See the sunlight now, but I still feel the rain. Time keeps moving, but I still feel the same.
So with that being said, we're going to go into my story. And I actually was contemplating. I'm going to just be real. I'm going to be real with y'all today. So I was contemplating. I was like, I don't know if I want to share it. I mean, I've shared my story many times to the public, to organizations, to churches, to schools, and when I say to schools, I'm talking to children in a different way. I'm not really sharing my testimony like as raw and real, but different ways. And then also to teachers as well, educators, because that's the space that I am still working in right now. But I was contemplating. I was like, do I want to share this? Do I want to record this? And so I really had to think about this. And I was like, okay, I'm going to share it, because I don't have it recorded anywhere. And I think that's what I was a little nervous about. I was like, I haven't actually shared this publicly and recorded it. So you are going to be kind of like the first one to like listen to this as I'm sharing my story. So here we go. We're gonna take it all the way back, but not too far back. We're gonna start how it all started back in 2012 is where a lot of it kind of started, and so we're gonna go back there. So my story, back in 2012, that was the time that I actually was not working in the classroom. If you know, I was an educator and still am an educator. My position has changed where I mentor now year 1 and year 2 teachers. And so a lot of my work currently now is helping teachers to lesson plan, a lot of social emotional work. A lot of teachers are burnt out. And so of course that's my passion. So I'm doing a lot of that. So I do work for the school district currently as of now, but in a different role. But back in 2012, I left the classroom because I literally had enough. I was like, I'm done. I'm burnt out. I was dealing with some depression and anxiety. I was going through a divorce at the time, back in 2012. And so I'm going through a lot. So around September of 2012, I was experiencing some abdominal pain. When I think back, I actually was experiencing this pain for maybe about 2 or 3 years and kind of ignored it. And so I want to encourage you, if you're having pain in your body is talking to you. So go and get it checked out. But I was ignoring this pain for quite a while. So I finally decided to go to the ER in September. When I went to the ER, it come to find out, they did an ultrasound. And so they're like, oh, they kind of pushed me aside. I'm going to be honest. They kind of pushed me aside because, like I said, I wasn't working as an educator. So I'm going to be real, y'all. I had no insurance at that time. I was trying to figure out my life, figure out what I wanted to do. I was going through a divorce, like I said. So they pushed me aside. So my sister, who is a nurse, she knew I have been in pain for a while. She's like, no, they need to do a CT scan. They need to do all these things to figure out what's going on. And thank God I did tell them. I said, maybe you guys need to do a CT scan, because when they did the ultrasound, they kind of figured that they saw something unusual when they were checking my abdomen cavity. So they did the ultrasound, they did the CT scan, come to find out that my appendix was the size, they said, of like a hand. Your appendix is supposed to be the size of your pinky. And they also saw that some of my colon was inflamed, and they couldn't tell how much of it was inflamed. So they said, we're going to have to go in and trigger warning for those who, my story, pardon me, I meant to go back and say trigger warning, because we're going to talk about, mental health and addiction and surgery and all that. So I just kind of wanted to, put that out there. But they said they had to go in and they had to actually go and do surgery. They couldn't do it laparoscopically. They had to cut me because they didn't know how much of my colon that was inflamed. So I'm in the hospital for a couple days. They did the first surgery. And so when they did the first surgery, they took out my appendix. And so they said that was enlarged. And they also took out about 12 inches or so of my colon. So they did the surgery. And then about a couple days later, I started to not feel so well. And I started to notice that my stomach was getting big, getting enlarged. It was like growing, and so they were like, we got to go back in and figure out what's going on. So they did the CAT scan and everything. They're like, yeah, we got to go back in and figure out what's going on. So what happened with my second surgery, a couple days later after my first, they saw where they took the bad colon out and where they reconnected me, I had leaks in my colon. And so that's not good. So my stool is not staying in my colon. There's leaks. So it's going into my bloodstream. So that was causing my abdomen to be enlarged and also causing me to be really sick. And so you can die from that. That's called septic. And so I was really, really sick. And so they were like, we have to go back in and we have to, clean you out. So they did the second surgery. Well, and like I said, this was a couple days after. So after the second surgery, I just remember waking up after the second surgery in so much pain. I remember I was screaming. I remember I didn't feel well. I remember so many signs of just, honestly, like they said that they gave me so much medication. They were like, we gave you so much medication, Roshawn, to like They said, this is their words, to kill a horse. That was their words. And I remember them saying this to me, but I was in so much pain and I felt so sick. And so my sister, who is a nurse, and her specialty at the time is a GI nurse, and that is the GI system, the stomach, the colon, all of that. So she was in the room at the time, and this was back in 2012, and she saw all the classic signs of me going into shock. She saw me just really sick. I was pale, just a lot of signs, and so she called the nurse back in, and she was like, "Nurse, something is not right with my sister. Something isn't right." And so, I just remember the doctors coming in, a few hours after my second surgery. And I remember the doctor, like I said, I was heavily medicated. I was heavily medicated, but I do remember some things going on. And so I remember him coming in and he pressed my stomach. Like I said, my stomach was it got even bigger, was out to here. And he pressed my stomach like this. And when he did, he said that I was about to flip out of the bed. Like his little touch I was in so much pain where it affected me so much. And he was like, they were trying to hold me down, like, no, don't move, because he wanted to see what was going on. And so when he touched me, I was just remembering I was in a lot of pain. And then he said, "Roshawn, we're going to have to do surgery number 3. He's like, but this surgery is going to be a little bit different." And I remember I was heavily, sedated and medicated, and I was just like, huh? And he was like, "We're going to have to go back in. We're going to have to clean you out. But this time we're going to have to give you an ileostomy bag." And I was like, "What the heck is that?" I mean, I did. I was like, "What is that?" And so he was explaining to me that, he explained it to me. I don't know if I even remember what he was talking about, So what an ileostomy bag is giving your colon time to heal and time to rest. And so a little piece of my colon will be outside of my stomach, and then there will be a bag. Now, this procedure is, it saves people's lives. If someone, had a wound or diagnosed with cancer or, other different types of illnesses, this procedure saves people's lives. However, some people may have to live with it the rest of their lives, and some may have it temporarily. And so when he explained that to me, I just remember I was just like, "What is this?" And so I was thinking that I would have to have this the rest of my life. And he was saying, "We don't know if you're going to have this temporarily, or we don't know for the rest of your life, but we want to give your colon some time to heal and to rest." Because what happened was, when they reconnected me, like I said, I had leaks. And so when they did the second surgery, it didn't hold. And so basically my intestines was just kind of opened up. And that was why I was very sick. And they were preparing my family the second and the third time. They were like, we're hoping that Roshawn makes it, but we don't know. So they did the third surgery. I was in the intensive care unit, ICU, for 30 days. I just remember, you guys, I remember, and when I talk about it, I still do get a little emotional about it, but I'm truly grateful that God has spared my life. And to this day, I always say I'm so grateful that my sister was there, because she spoke up. And I want to tell people, to make sure that you advocate for your health. Make sure you have people to advocate for you, because not only my sister, but my mom and my dad, when I was in ICU, they were advocating for me. My sister was saying something isn't right. She knew in her spirit she had to fight. They had to fight. And so, so I just want to share that with you, to make sure that you are advocating. Make sure you have a family or friends who is there by your side when you're in the hospital. So I thank God for her. She is my angel. I thank God for my parents who were there as well. And so I was there for 30 days. But when you think about it, that was a lot. That was a lot for someone to handle, to go through. Very traumatic, and go through and not knowing, if they have to have this ileostomy, this bag for the rest of their lives. Going into the hospital thinking that they're going to just take my appendix out and maybe my colon, I'll be fine, right? Going through a divorce at the time, so going through all of these things is very traumatic for one person to go through. And then leaving out of the ICU, going home and not knowing what your life is going to look like, not knowing, am I going to have this back forever? Can I eat the same foods? Which was no, I couldn't. Can I enjoy life? I mean, no, I was so depressed. I was going through medical trauma. In hindsight, the best thing should have been, which was never talked about in the hospital, was to go and seek treatment and therapy and counseling. And that was not talked about. I didn't go through counseling. I didn't. And so I remember when I left out of the hospital, I talked to my doctor and I was telling my doctor, I was like, I can't sleep. I keep having these flashbacks of me like dying. I remember when I was in so much pain, and I remember like I couldn't speak when I was laying on that hospital bed. I remember I was so sick. I was literally screaming inside saying, please help me. Please help me. I feel so sick. And so I was having those flashbacks. I was telling my doctor, I was like, I can't sleep. And so they're like, well, we're going to give you some medication to help you sleep. And I was like, okay. So they gave me, a sleeping medication that, I have to take every night. And I remember taking that, but I was still having so much anxiety and panic at night after night. I was just like, this is not working. Yes, it's helping me to sleep, but I'm still like anxious. I'm still having panic attacks. I'm still having dreams. I'm still waking up. And so, I thought the best thing would do, which we know, was to help with my anxiety and to help with those flashbacks and that trauma, was to drink. And so this became, a vicious cycle for 9 years, where I would take my sleeping medication and I would have, one glass would turn into 2, would turn into 3, would turn into 4, and sometimes more, just so I didn't have to relive that experience, and just so I could sleep at night, and just to have that, to take the anxiety away. And so this became a vicious cycle night after night. Now, mind you, I want to explain to you that I was, I did eventually, go back to work. And when I share the story, I always say that, I was one of those, functional, I was, functional, but still depressed, functional, but still, addicted to alcohol and the sleeping medication. So I was still able to work. And my body was so used to drinking at night. If I didn't drink, I couldn't sleep. I would be up all night. And so I was so dependent on the alcohol and the sleeping medication. And so I was able to work. I wasn't drinking at work. I was the closet, drinker, and the functional, alcoholic. And I was able to do that. But with that being said, I did eventually, end up going back to work. And so back in 2020, when there was the shutdown, I was teaching online. And during that time was like, it was kind of triggering, because everybody was, of course, we know, was in isolation. We were teaching online as educators, which was the worst. Let's just say how it is. I mean, we did the best we could in the situation, but it was the worst. But we made the best, like I said. And so during that time, I started having a lot of health issues as well. A lot of fatigue in my body. I think sitting at the computer a lot, just a lot. And so the end of 2020, I told, I was working as an educator, and I told my doctor, I was like, I need to take some time off for my mental health, for my physical health. I was like, I'm not doing well. I'm not feeling well. I need to figure out what's going on. And so I was able to take some time off. But this was like a blessing in disguise, because when I did, that's when I realized that I actually need to go and get some help, because I wasn't taking the time off to go get help. I was taking the time off because I wanted to figure out what was going on with my body and my mental health. But the couple weeks into me taking that time off, I realized, I was like, I need to go and seek some professional help. And that was the end of 2020. And I remember one night I was in my room, and I remember I had, I think I had one sleeping pill left, and I had like 15 days of the month. So that tells you that I was taking more than what I needed to of the sleeping medication. And so I just remember I looked at that one pill and I said, what am I going to do for the rest of this month? Drinking is just not enough for me. I need something more. Like, how am I going to go to sleep for the rest of the 2 weeks? And so when I took that pill, I just remember I said, I can't keep doing this to myself. I was like, I cannot keep doing this. I'm like, I've been trying to do this on my own. year after year trying to get off the sleeping medication, trying to get off alcohol. I was like, but this has not been successful. And when I tried, I would have shakes. My body, like I said, my body was so dependent. I was, I couldn't sleep. And I just cried that night. And I was just like, God, help me. What do I need to do? And I just remember that in my spirit, I knew that I needed to go and get some help. I knew that I couldn't do this on my own. I knew that it was time to go and seek professional help. So I had to admit it to myself first before I could do that. So once I did that, I shared with my amazing sister, who's my angel, a couple days later, and I told her, I said, I need to go get some help. I've been drinking, and my family knew the extent of my depression and my anxiety. I don't think they knew that it was this bad though. They were aware. They knew I suffered with anxiety and the PTSD. But once I shared with my sister, I was like, I need to go get help. She was like, girl, I got you. I mean, she went and she found a facility for me to go in. And like the next day she had a couple of places. She's like, look, girl, I got you. These are a couple places for us to check out, for us to call, so you can go in. This is a good time. And so I was so scared, and we found a place in Edmonds, Washington, which is this amazing, amazing treatment facility that people come from all over the world for, different reasons, people, all walks of life, depression, anxiety, eating disorders. There's even married couples there that need couples counseling, so many different, people of all walks of life. And so this facility basically just teaches you tools, on how to, overcome, anxiety. There's nutritionists there to help you with your eating plans. There's, you're like going to school. You're learning about, mental health and how to, cope, and some tools and strategies that you can use. And so you're in a small setting and also in a one-on-one setting as well. And so the program that I went to was a 4-week program. But when I was there, I was like, I am taking, I'm going to take my time and I'm going to benefit from this. And I was like, how long can we be in this program? They're like, oh, about 2 months. I was like, I need 2 months. So I was kind of telling them, I told them, heal me, please heal me, but I wanted to take advantage of that time to get all the tools that I needed. And so during that time, like I said, there was a counselor there. The counselors are there. Nutritionists are there. Medication, therapy. I also did some trauma therapy while I was in there. And I've talked about LI therapy on episode with Larkita, who talked about it. So I did LI therapy there. And so it was the best decision of my life. It was the hardest because I was scared, but it was the best decision. And I'm truly grateful that I was able to go through that journey to go to treatment. And so when I was there, I was journaling. I was writing my emotions because that's what helps me. Not knowing that what I was journaling and writing would become, my songs, my music. I was just sharing how I felt. And so looking back at Wounded Scars, they have this room, it's called the Zen Room. And it's a quiet place with, dim lights and some music. And so I would go in there, a couple times a day, and I would just write. And so I just remember writing, I think it was like day 3 or 4 for me. I just started writing, the silence is loud. I don't know what to do with myself. Depression is real, like a cloud hanging over me. Been medicating myself to numb the feelings, but it's not working anymore. Drink the bottle to the very last drop. Even though I wanted more, I want to run to you. And I was talking about I want to run to God. And so I just remember writing that. And then as I was there, other lyrics came up with free. I was talking about how free or how depression and anxiety, if there were people, I just wanted to tell them to pack their bags and leave, go to the left. You've done all these things. You've stolen my identity. You're a thief in the night. You took away my soul and silenced my thoughts. You masked my smile, caused dark and dreary days. No rainbows in the sky. No butterflies. And then I said, but it's a brand new day. Sunshine, no rain. Move out my way. No negativity. I know I got the victory. I'm free. So when I was there, it dropped in my spirit that these were songs. And I was scared. I was scared, y'all. I was so scared. And, I knew I had to release the songs, and I was truly, truly scared. But when I left out of treatment, it was the day after my birthday in March, and we celebrated. My family came up and we celebrated my birthday. We celebrated my journey of graduating from treatment. And I don't think I've ever shared this story publicly, but I just want to tell you this quick story of what happened to my music journal. Well, my sister, my mom, and my dad, they came up to come and get me. And my sister drove, and my mom and my dad drove. And so there was 2 cars. And so I had packed all my stuff up in both of the cars. I bought a bike and bought some different things while I was there. And so we decided to go to a restaurant in Seattle. And mind you, like I said, my stuff was in both cars. And we were celebrating, like I said, my birthday, celebrating my treatment. And we were there for maybe a couple hours, just eating, enjoying. I'm telling them my journey. And then when we walk outside, we noticed that not just my sister's car, but my parents' car was both broken into. I mean, I have bought my nieces and nephews gifts when I was there. I mean, I bought everybody gifts. I went shopping when I was there. Like I said, I bought a bike when I was there. My backpack was in my sister's car, and in my backpack was my journal that I journaled all my music. And I remember when I walked out of that restaurant, you guys, I was like, I mean, I screamed and I was on the floor. And the only thing that I could think about was that music journal. I mean, yes, the other stuff that I bought for my family, yes, it's material things. I was like, I don't even care. But that music journal, I was so distraught. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And so my sister, my mom, my dad had to console me. They're like, girl, you've been through all this treatment. Use your skills. So, and I didn't want to hear that at the time because I was so mad. I was just like, what happened? And so we went home, and my dad was like, come on, we're going to pray. And so the 4 of us prayed. And so I was just crying. I'm just like, that was my music. I just want my music back. And so let me tell you what happened. So we slept through the night, and I get this text on Facebook from this random lady. And she was like, hi, I found this backpack in the lawn here, and it has a notebook in it. And she's like, and your name's in it. And so that's how I reached out to find you on Facebook. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, is the journal in there? And she's like, yep. I was like, where are you at? Where are you located? And she gave us her information, and she wasn't too far away from the restaurant where we were at. And so everything, like, I think all my gifts was gone, but the only thing that was left in that backpack, you guys, oh my gosh, was the journal and the backpack. And the backpack was wet because it rained throughout the night, but the journal was in there, dry. My lyrics was in there. I mean, that, you guys, that is a testimony, because all I cared about, I was like, I don't even remember the lyrics that I was writing, because whatever I was writing in the moment was what I was feeling. And so that's how I knew. I was like, oh, these are songs. So I called my producer literally the next day, and we got in the studio a week after I had left out of treatment. And so that's the story kind of behind my music. But friends, I just want to say, like, it has been a journey. And I talk about how, going through ups and downs and going through healing, it is a process. It is a process. It's not easy. And I just want to go over a couple things that helped me to overcome, my depression, my anxiety, my addiction and PTSD. And so things that has helped me, a disclaimer, it may not or may help you. And so, go seek your doctor and your licensed therapist. But I just want to go over just a couple things. I want to leave you with the things that has helped me through these past few years. And so the first thing I want to say is that number one is I had to admit it to myself. I had to say, when I was in my darkest in that bedroom that night, when I took that last, sleeping pill, and I said, how am I going to get through the rest of the month? That was like my lowest, because I was like, I can't keep doing this. And that is when I knew. I said, I can't. And so I admitted to myself was the first thing that I did. And then I went and talked to my sister, who I can trust. And she helped me and helped provide a safe space for me for sure, but also helped to look for the facility. And so that's step number one, is admitting to yourself, going to someone who you can trust. The second thing would be, going to treatment, or, before I did go into the treatment facility for 2 months, I did have to go to a detox facility, of course, because, we know that getting off of alcohol could cause, seizures. And so I was there for about, I think, 3 or 4 days, detox, which was a culture shock for me. It was such a culture shock, but I had to, do that before I went into the treatment facility. And so whatever that treatment is for you, if that's detox, if that's going to counseling, going to therapy, whatever that is, to go and seek that help, that professional help, because like I said, I couldn't do it on my own, and it wasn't safe to do it on my own. So I want to encourage you to go and do that. And so that also helped to remove the environment that I was in. I was able to get the support and gain the skills and the knowledge and the tools. And also that was helping for accountability as well while I was going through treatment. So that was great. So admitting to yourself, talking to someone, going to treatment. The next thing was seeking, not just, going to the treatment facility, but also I knew that I needed more than just going. And so that's when we sought trauma therapy. And so when I was in the facility, we did LI therapy. And like I said, we talked about that on episode with Larkita 13. And then when I left out of treatment, I did EMDR. I went to advise you to go and do your research on both of them. I don't even know how to even explain like how this was so beneficial in my healing journey. So beneficial with LI therapy and EMDR. So go and do some research on that. The next thing was, I would say, is to find an outlet. And so for me, my outlet was writing about how I felt. And so not knowing it was going to be my music, but finding what that is, if that is journaling for you, if that's music, some type of art form, swimming, kickboxing, some way to just release your anxiety and your stress, something that you're passionate about. And so I just want to encourage you to find that outlet that can help you to be able to process, what you're going through and to release it as well. The next thing is, I say nature. Going through my treatment, I didn't realize how much nature has been impactful. Just going out and walking outside, taking breaks throughout the day and just being out in nature has truly helped me. We also talk about that with Larkita on episode 13, grounding ourselves and going outside barefoot. There's some scientific evidence on just how that can be very impactful and also to stabilize your mood and also your sleep. So I just want you to encourage you and, going out in nature. The next thing that I would say is, I want to talk a little bit about this because at the time I needed that, and that was affirmations and vision board. That was very helpful and very therapeutic for me, speaking life into me and saying, I am beautifully and wonderfully made. I'm made in God's image, and just speaking life over myself. And so I just want to encourage you, for, affirmations, if that helps you. And vision boards, I'm so visual. I needed to see myself in a better light, in a better circumstance, me sitting and visualizing, that's great, but I needed to see myself. So, if that is something that helps you through your healing journey with affirmations and vision boards, I encourage you to do that as well. And the last thing that I want to talk about, which has been the missing piece of the puzzle with healing. We talk about the spiritual, we talk about, the physical, we talk about all those things. But the last thing that was missing for me was learning about functional medicine. And I looked into that. I became my own health detective after I, had my surgeries. I dealt with a lot of digestive issues, a lot of issues. So I was literally like researching and I was trying to figure out what foods were causing this. I mean, I was living in the bathroom. Like it was a lot for me. So I really did become my own health detective. And so I found functional medicine, and we talk about that on episode 8 with Mel, who is a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. She introduced me to that a year after I left out of treatment. I was so intrigued. I joined, and hopefully I will be certified. Actually, it's coming up. I have my last oral exam in the next couple of weeks. So when this comes out, I might be certified. I'll let you know. But functional medicine just helps you to identify hidden healing opportunities that's going on in your body and get into the root cause, and using functional labs. And so I'll be trained and certified to be able to help people to identify what's going on. We become our first clients. We take ourselves through that journey, that healing journey. And I needed that because food and diet and rest and exercise were kind of missing in my healing journey. Well, the correct way until I learned about it. And then I was able to educate myself on it. And now I'll be able to educate others on functional medicine as well. So that's what helped me on my healing journey. And of course, praying and, believing in God, who helped me through that journey as well. And God helped me through that journey, of course, giving him all the honor and all the glory. So, oh my gosh, I think I talked a lot. I shared my story, and I think I've been talking, but I really just wanted to share this. And I truly hope that this, my story and all the 15 other stories have truly helped you. And that's why I wanted this podcast to shed some light, to inspire and encourage others. And I pray and I hope it has. I just want to say again, and I'm getting all emotional, thank you for this journey. Continue to follow me on this journey as I can. Next season, I'll bring on more guests. We'll have, I kind of have some ideas of how I want to do that, but I want to encourage you to stay tuned. And thank you for all of your prayers. Thank you for all of your words of encouragement. Thank you for your support. And I love all of you on this journey, and continue to pray for me. And I just want to encourage you, like I say in every episode, to stay lit. And when I say stay lit, I'm talking about staying lit, meaning don't burn out. But if you do burn out, because that's life be lifing, use your tools or get educated on your tools. So I say stay lit, keep shining, and ignite freedom. And I will see you next season. Love you all. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to From Weeping to Warrior, Igniting Freedom with Roshawn Nicole. To be a guest on the show, please contact us at info@RoshawnNicoleWellness.com. We would love to connect with you, so please take a moment to like, subscribe, and follow us on all social media platforms. We look forward to having you join us next time for Weeping to Warrior, Igniting Freedom with Roshawn Nicole.
Free, no